Hello students, welcome to the EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Sarla Gopalan, formerly Secretary to Government of India, Ministry of Human Resource Development. Very happy to be here with you today and discuss the role of the women's movement and the grassroots organization in establishing the status of women in India and also agitating for various problems that they have encountered and getting legislations changed, new programs initiated to pave the way for their development, inclusion and empowerment. The women's movement in India has been very powerful and they have been able to bring about a great deal of change in governance as also in the environment for their survival in this patriarchal society. I have a lot of instances to share with you and thank you very much for your attention. Right from the days of the freedom struggle, Mahatma Gandhi ji beckoned women to leave their hearth and come to fight for the freedom of India. Many women joined the struggle and contributed in many different ways. Some of them fought shoulder to shoulder with the men in the freedom movement. Some of them took care of them, cooked for them and helped them in keeping up the tempo of the fight. In recognition of all this, when India got its freedom and the Constitution of India was written, women got a very special place in the Constitution and equality of sexes was a very dominant factor brought out in the preamble of the Constitution. We have to thank the great women who have fought with the men for achieving the freedom which we are enjoying today as a free nation. Women's movement in India has been in many forms and I shall deal with it in two parts. The first part is the major issues on which women have fought across the country, and the second part is little efforts of how they are coping with some of them by organizing themselves. Here I must recognize the very big role that NGOs, non-government organizations and civil society has played in organizing women. One of the most prominent of these women's struggles over the years has been women's struggle for land rights. They have fought for getting right to the land because it is so symbolic for achieving all other factors of empowerment and access. Without right to land, they can't get credit, they can't get recognition in the society, they cannot get resources for coming out of poverty, they can't get incomes, they can't get title. Therefore, it is very important. And then in Bihar, the women fought and it was called the Ayo Aidani group, women's rights group. The Santali women in Bodh Gaya district in Bihar fought for ownership of land. I know in South India, the land for the tillers movement, they fought for getting the workers landless laborers who worked almost like animals. So they fought for their right, their entitlement to get land, cultivate and live like other persons. Otherwise, I have seen it with my own eyes. They were living like animals. The leaders of that movement, Land for the Tillers, Mr. Jagannathan and his wife, they dedicated their whole life for this and brought them from the status of animals to human beings. And this transformation was very moving and very difficult, but it did happen, and this happened in my knowledge, and I am very glad that I was able to share a little bit of that struggle in getting them access to land. The larger movements for women, everybody knows about the Chipko movement, where the women went and hugged the trees to save their environment, because it was those trees in Uttarakhand where the limestone quarries were wanting to remove the trees for mining limestone. These women went, hugged the trees without allowing the contractors to cut them and remove them, because these trees gave lot of employment and resources for the entire community to live in that area, and the best way women thought was to hug the trees. That's why it's called the Chipko movement. Other kind of women's movement have concentrated on fighting against violence emanating from alcoholism. This has taken part in many parts of the country, and particularly it is important to mention Andhra Pradesh, where the government got defeated because the women struggled against arak and liquor sales. The new government had to introduce prohibition, while government was against it because they would lose a lot of revenue. Yet the women's movement was so strong against the sale of liquor and arak that they were able to get a new government established which promised to bring prohibition, and did bring it, but later they changed it because the state was without revenue, without the sale of alcohol. Now that struggle is still going on today. You can open the TV, many channels are showing how women are struggling to destroy liquor shops, liquor vending, because they have no domestic peace with their men drunk coming home and beating them. There have been a number of issues relating to health on which the women's movement has worked very hard. They have protested against coercive population control measures which are targeting women without meeting their basic health needs. Unethical attempts for clinical trials and introducing of long acting injectable hormonal contraceptives through reproductive research centers and public health programs respectively. The biased research agenda of contraceptives like Norplant, anti-fertility vaccine research and test trials. So there has been women who are educated and researchers fighting for larger groups of women, and this is also part of the women's movement, while others are the affected women themselves going and fighting against what they think is harmful to them. The other instance is where women fought against price rise. They fought so vehemently that today you have consumer associations formed and a whole lot of organizations which look into unfair prices for any commodity. Women have been very strong in this. They fought against raising price of kerosene, raising price of LPG, and after every budget, women take up those issues which affect them in the household. I remember one of my ministers was asking me when I was Secretary Women and Child Development as to why only women should fight. Isn't it the general concern? Well, women fight because they are taking care of the household and they know where the shoe pinches. If all their items of household consumption become costlier, with the men giving them a limited amount of money to take care of the family, they struggle. Therefore, they fight for it. The other issue where women have fought is the portrayal of women in advertisements, which is leading to a lot of harm to the women and treating them as goods, as a commodity of commerce, whereas they are persons with dignity and self-esteem which they cannot let go. These are all struggles which women have put up. Coming to my other part, how are we countering some of these? In every situation of calamity, women suffer most, be it law and order situation, be it war, be it any other kind of calamity, it is the women who suffer. I remember once when I went for an appraisal of the help and palliatives given to a community which was affected by the tsunami, I think 2008, and there the women, all their huts, all their belongings, everything near about Pondicherry, Kadalur, everything was washed away. And then the women said all they could save was their very thick gold chain which they were wearing on their body, because all other things were taken away by the floods, but this was the only thing, and they knew that it is this little investment in gold which can be on their body will save them and be their security, because any other thing they keep, their men will steal and take away to drink, and it will not be there. And particularly in this kind of calamity, even when their homes were destroyed, they had their chains on the body, and that's how they saved themselves. In this direction, what I have now to say is the self-help groups that have been formed under various programs and by various organizations. It started in the south, largely in South India, first in Hyderabad, where the cooperatives organized women into small groups with mentors and started giving them credit, and along with credit also educated them on various factors of better living. So the women came into groups and started saving money and then borrowing money according to the savings, and a lot of them could come out of poverty, or at least to subsistence level from absolute poverty. And we have examples of Ila Bhatt of the Seva, who has organized women on a very large scale in Gujarat, and that model has been replicated in many parts of the country. And here in Tamil Nadu, long back, under the trade union movement and the cooperatives, the workers cooperatives were started, and the women workers were brought together and given education on how to do their business, and they were also given credit. And both these experiments, or rather all the three experiments in Hyderabad, in Gujarat and in Tamil Nadu, proved that women are very good creditors. They give back the money that they borrow, only that they need supervision. We started programs like this right from the 1952 onwards in the Central Social Welfare Board, where small groups of women were given cattle, cows, so that they could milk the cow and sell the milk. But this was before the dairy program came, and therefore not always they benefited, because they didn't know where to sell the milk, because in poor communities nobody has money to buy anything, and therefore it did not bring same kind of income to people all over. But then small groups which took up small enterprises did make some kind of living. But now in a larger scale, we have taken to, of course, the Rural Development Department brought up programs under their poverty alleviation program to help women's groups. They called it the development of women and children in rural areas under the Dwakra program, and started giving small loans under the IRDP program to women's groups. And there also the dominant enterprise was dairy, and it succeeded wherever there were milk collection points, otherwise it failed. I remember the biggest successful model, I would say, was in Kerala, where women were organized first to bring in their own self-enterprise. Groups of women brought in their own self-enterprise, and they were able to make what the market wanted, maybe in garments, in other kind of handicrafts, or in other kind of food products. Later this was refined and developed, and then NABARD also gave help in a big way, and UNICEF gave guidance, and they formed area development committees based on a survey of poverty on various indicators of owning assets, employment, education, and health. About 9 criteria were given for determining who should be the beneficiaries. And these groups of women, they started from the neighborhood, that is at the ward level, and then they formed small groups at the ward level, which integrated into larger groups at the apex level, and then again at the district level were district committees. And they made elaborate programs of what kind of enterprises they could take up. They were given skill training for that, and also NABARD gave credit through the banks to them for the selected enterprise. This was a very successful program. After this, now the very famous program in Kerala of the self-help groups is the Kudumbashree program, which has brought 34 lakh accounts for women in banks, which was unprecedented long before the present regime, which is bringing everybody into the banking sector with accounts in the bank. The Kudumbashree was able to get everyone. Of course, here I must tell you about one experiment we did from the Women and Child Development Department, because the then Prime Minister, Mr. Narasimha Rao, he recognized that the best way to give an entitlement to a woman is an asset in her hand, and this asset he thought could be an account in the post office, because the most ubiquitous organization is the post office, which has a branch almost in every village. Therefore, he thought that was the most accessible point for anybody to have an account. At that time, there were no, even now I don't think bank branches have reached all villages. Post office has reached at least crore and a half, 1.5 lakh villages, but banks have yet to reach all the interior parts of the area. So in the post office, according to this program, we called it was the Empowerment Women program. If the women saved 300 rupees, they got interest of 75 rupees per year as an attraction. And this was a big incentive for women to save money and have an account in their name. I am talking about 1995, 96, when 300 rupees were very, very valuable compared to the money value now. Therefore, a lot of initiatives have been taken even by the government to organize women into self-help groups under various programs, and that organization of women has been a source of great empowerment. It has not only given access to credit and enterprise, but it has also given them access to skill. It has brought them closer to other women of similar situation, which organization has helped them combat a lot of violence in the community, even domestic violence, because I know of true stories where the women's self-help group has gone to tackle a man who has been beating his wife after consumption of alcohol, or a man who's been ill-treating the wife and oppressing her, or a mother-in-law who has been ill-treating the daughter-in-law, or even the police who have been harassing people. These women's groups have been able to go and tackle the police, the family which is oppressing, and other sources of threat to the security of the women. Therefore, the self-help group at the grassroots level has become a very, very strong organization. In fact, a lot of hurdles had to be broken for the self-help group to access even their own deposits in the banks. In fact, some governments have lost because they have not been able to make that access available to the women who deposited a lot of money in the banks by not giving them credit commensurate to the savings they have made in the bank. So, the women power has been very powerful, and organization is the crux of that power. Single woman is very feeble, weak, and cannot combat atrocities against her. But when a group comes together, that organization has great strength, and that strength can combat any kind of evil that takes place in the community, even in the home, in the community, or in the society as a whole. The biggest enemy today for women is violence. Violence at the domestic level from your own close relatives. Recently, we have the case of the 10-year-old girl who's gone almost 8 months. I think as we are talking, she'll be nearing the 9th month, and the court was in no position to allow an abortion for her. And this poor 10-year-old girl, she was raped by her own uncle. Now, this kind of domestic violence cannot be prevented unless the group around the house becomes vigilant and take care of this kind of atrocities from cousins, from even stepfathers have raped their own children, girls, and it's so dangerous for the girl to stay home when the mother is not there. Sometimes even the mother is not able to prevent this, so she has to take the help of the community and get strength from the neighbors and her other friends. And I have recorded this in my observation of the self-help groups, where we did a study with the Nashalingam Home Science College of various successes that the self-help groups have met with. There was one group which could not access drinking water, even though there was a tap about 200 feet away, because this particular habitation was outside the municipal limits. So, these women got together and they paid for the pipeline and got water to their habitation. There was another case where there was no road, so during the rainy season they were not able to get across the slushy area to school or take their sick to the hospital. In fact, 2 people had died in 6 months period because there was no connection, no vehicle could come, and the sick person could not be taken across for medical help in time, and therefore they lost those persons. So the women got together, they collected money and made the road, and then the corporation came up and gave little more money to finish it. We can give large number of instances where self-help groups have got involved, not only in getting little solace from violence, but also getting lot of infrastructure built. They've got street lighting done, they've got drinking water access, they have got roads made, they have got school teachers come to school and take class regularly. They have reported teachers who have been absenting. A lot of work they have done. And in this context, I would also like to add one more kind of institution that has done well, particularly in parts of Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka. Those are the ICDS Anganwadi units, where the Anganwadi workers have been able to get the community together and mobilize a great deal of help and meet the needs of that community in terms of nutrition, in terms of facilities like classrooms, schools, roads, and maybe even skill training and access to employment. There is no, according to my thinking, unless the community comes together, organizes itself, there can be no solution to our many problems like infrastructure, poverty, violence, exploitation. The community can very strongly face all this, provided they can organize themselves together. Men have asked me when I have gone to look at the work done by self-help groups as to why we are not organizing the men and we are organizing only the women. I said, of course, I am only secretary to Women and Child Development Department, so I am organizing women. So why don't you men get organized? When I look further into it, you see many cooperatives have failed because it is largely the men who have been members of the cooperatives. They don't return the money they borrow, and then the society goes under liquidation unless every citizen, man or woman. Now here the self-help credit groups of women have been successful because they've had close monitoring, and these monitors ensure that every woman returns the money, and that's how those credit groups have been very successful. Similar kind of thing would have to be done for men also, and the culture of repaying what they borrow is very important if those groups have got to be successful. Therefore, I think we have to gear ourselves to organize people to come together and work for their community very unitedly, so that they can successfully answer all the needs of that community. We must now take advantage of the Panchayati Raj system, where you have local self-government with a panchayat, elected panchayat, because the new constitution amendment has made it compulsory that every 5 years there has to be election and the members have to be elected. If we can strictly enforce that and get the panchayats to do their functions efficiently, a lot of community building activities can take place, because a large amount of money comes to the panchayats. If we must eliminate corruption, we have to start eliminating corruption right from the panchayat level upwards, right from the ward level upwards, so that the panchayats can become very strong, trustworthy, and do all the tasks given to them. Otherwise, nation building cannot take place without a network of strong communities at the habitation level, at the village level, at the panchayat level. If our habitation level, community level and habitation level and village level becomes strong, we will have a very strong nation, and therefore we have to aspire to organize men and women to work for themselves, unite together, coordinate, and achieve all their needs, fulfill all their needs. And when they become a strong force and demand it, no government can deny them what they need. Programs we have galore, money we have in plenty in many schemes, and all the time you see the Controller and Auditor General reporting that you have not spent the money allocated for these programs. So we are surrendering a lot of money allocated in the budgets because we are not able to implement the programs. This is what I can tell you as a former government servant. And this waste of resources will not happen if the community is well organized, both at the level of the households and at the level of the family, with both men and women organizing themselves together to fulfill all their own needs and also the needs of the community. We need to educate those of us who are in a position to educate them, help them, and take these messages to them. We should do that, and that would be our duty. And as extension service, we must tell them about all that is available so that they can benefit from these programs. The other day I was reading in the newspaper that while there is loan available for all students from the high school onwards till the end of their college to go up for higher studies, and government will subsidize that, students are not getting the subsidy. They are not coming forward to get the subsidy, and the banks are charging interest on them. This is just one instance. So there are so many facilities about which we have to make the people aware, knowledgeable, so that they can get the best of what is available for them and achieve their hierarchy of needs in progression. So with this, I would like to close my little discussion on the grassroots organization. Thank you very much.